There is in this beautiful and great land we call America a deep, gaping, bleeding wound called gun violence. Every time we hear about a mass shooting, every time we hear about a school shooting, every time we hear about a man with mental illness who decides to one day shoot his whole family and then shoot himself, we repeat this phrase: there are no words, there are no words, there are no words. And I understand. The pain, the shock, the tragedy is too great to put into words. And yet all we have are words. Words of blame, words of anger, words of shame, words of grief, words of sorrow. And then last Christmas, my daughter's friend was killed by gun violence. It was Christmas time, so my daughter Julie came back from college to Ohio, and her friend Aria went back to Connecticut. And the night before Christmas, Aria's father shot her and then shot himself. And my daughter and I spent Christmas grieving. And as I try to put my sadness and my anger into words, because this is how I process the world. I process the world through writing. As I tried to write a poem about this very painful experience, I realized that none of us really survived gun violence in America. Even if you weren't hurt by gun violence, even if your loved one wasn't taken away from you through gun violence. Every time you hear about a school shooting, every time you hear about a mass shooting, every time you hear about a church shooting, every time you hear about a cinema shooting, every time you hear about a random street shooting, you are not okay. You're traumatized. And you're wondering, am I next? Is my child next? Is my best friend next? And you are not okay. So none of us really, in America, survived gun violence. The way I process the world, the way I think about the world, I think about it in both Arabic and English, Arabic being my first language. So I wrote this poem in Arabic, and then I wrote it again in English. I will recite it in Arabic, and then recite the translation in English. This poem is called I Stand Before a Mother Who's Lost Her Child to Gun Violence. أقف أمام تحمل جسد طفلتها المتحطمة المقتولة بسلاح والدها. أخشى النظر في عينيها، لعل الموت معدي. أخشى أن أرى ما لا يمكن نسيانه. أريد أن أعتذر لها، أعتذر أنني أرى طفلتي نائمة هادئة مطمئنة في فراشها. أعتذر أنني أرى طفلتي تكبر. أعتذر أنني أسمع طفلتي تضحك. أعتذر لها أنها الآن لا تملك سوى الذكريات. سأجمع كل الرصاص، سأجمع كل الأسلحة، سأجمع كل الأكاذيب، مثل من حقي حمل سلاح، حقي أعطاني إياه الرب، مثل وماذا عن المادة الثانية من الدستور، مثل الوحيد الذي يمكن إيقاف مجرم بسلاح هو رجل صالح بسلاح. سأجمع كل الدموع التي ذرفتها الأمهات من أجل أطفال أمريكا المقتولين بالعنف المسلح، ولن تساوي كل الدموع ولا كل الأكاذيب ولا كل الأسلحة ولا كل الرصاص نفس واحد من أنفاس طفلتك التي تنام الآن تحت التراب. I stand before a mother who's lost her child to gun violence, and I want to apologize. I'm sorry I get to see my child sleep safe and sound in her bed. I'm sorry I get to see my child grow. I'm sorry I get to hear my child laugh. I'm sorry that all you have now are memories. I want to gather all the bullets. I want to gather all the guns. I want to gather all the lies, like guns are my God-given right. Like, what about the Second Amendment? Like, the only person who could stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. I want to gather all the tears spilled for American children murdered by gun violence. And not all the tears, not all the lies, not all the bullets, not all the guns can equal one breath, not even one breath, of your child who now sleeps in the ground.